The federal government has just declared a major food shortage emergency in multiple states. Major emergency, 40% reduction is what we are dealing with right now, at least 40%. And this has been declared in 6 different states that I can find so far. And it seems like more states are going to be hit with this as well. So you need to be getting prepared. You need to be getting stocked up on food. You need to be getting ready. Do you have your 20-pound bag of rice ready to go? All right, that's 2 weeks of calories right there. Are you looking up all the stuff that you can forage in your area? Because the federal government just came out and declared an emergency in 6 different states for major food shortages and major food reductions. Over 40% and reduced food production right now is happening right now. All right, so this is big. You need to be learning how to grow your own food. You need to be stocked up on seeds. You need to be stocked up on all your canned food, all your dry food, all that stuff. Have your pantry filled up right now. Be rotating your pantry. If you have old stuff from last year when you got stocked up, eat some of that stuff now. All right, make sure you like it and then get some more. All right, rotate your pantry because big things are happening. 6 different states just declared a food emergency, and this is in coordination with the federal government. All right, so this is huge news that this is going on. This is the US. We should not have these food production and food shortage problems, but we're having massive issues in the US right now. And it seems like there's a lot of things going on that are targeting our food supply and wiping it out. So you need to be prepared. You need to be getting ready. And this is also tied into world events that are going on as well too. All right, we just had a major port in Turkey. All right, a major export port where most of the grain in Turkey goes in and out just had a major explosion. All right, major grain explosion there at the port, damaging the port. This just happened in Turkey. We just had the deal overseas, all right, with these warring countries. They just backed out of the grain deal over there, and we are going to see global grain shortages, and we've already seen prices go up from that as well. So all these things are tying in. We are seeing record drought right now in the US as well. We are seeing Iowa at 100% drought. 100% of Iowa is under a major drought right now. 100% of Iowa is under drought right now. So big things are happening, and this is affecting the crop yields. This is affecting the food production. This is affecting the cattle. They're having to cull cattle. All right, so we're going to dive into all this news here. Lots of big news, and the US is getting hit hard, and this has led to the federal government declaring an emergency in 6 different states, a food emergency. All right, so you need to get prepared. If you saw my video yesterday, all right, go check that video out if you haven't watched it yet. But I was sitting in front of this little crab apple tree, all right, and some people were saying, oh, those are crab apples, you can't even really eat those. I mean, my kids are eating them, and this is a food source that grows on its own with no care, no fertilizer, no water. It's just growing on its own out here. There's a bunch of these apple trees out here that have little apples all over them. All right, so just a food source like that could save your life. And we are moving into territories where now the federal government is getting involved because there's been over a 40% reduction at least in food production capacity. All right, that's what's happening right now in 6 different states. So this is major. This is right in the middle of summer where we should be having bumper crops. We should be having major yields, major exports of grain right now. We should be hitting all of our high points right now in the middle of summer, and the federal government is coming out and saying that this is a food emergency. All right, we also have food inflation jumping to its highest rate in 18 months. All right, in 18 months. So we thought that all this stuff was over. We thought that we were kind of through with this food inflation. All right, this kind of hit last year really hard at the beginning of last year when all this stuff popped off. we had a lot of food inflation because fertilizer was affected, grain was affected, like we were talking about earlier. That deal, they made a deal for it, but that deal has now been rescinded, and we could see major grain shortages throughout the world. And now food inflation is at its highest rate in 18 months again. So it has jumped back up. This inflation has not gone away, and food inflation is going to hit even harder now with the federal government coming out and declaring this emergency in 6 different states. All right, so lots of things are going on. You need to be growing food. You need to be finding people that grow food. Go to farmers markets and meet these people. I did farmers markets for years, and there are people that will just talk to you, right? I would always just talk to my customers whenever they would come by and they would want to talk. Certain people would just want to talk and pick my brain and see what I'm doing. And a lot of these farmers are open to that too, all right? I was just grateful to have customers, and you build that relationship with people. And I still remember these people from 5, 6, 7 years ago. I still remember specific people. And if something ever went down, all right, I don't live in Florida anymore. This was back in Florida. But if something ever went down and they contacted me and they were like, hey, I need some food, I need some whatever, I would gladly provide extra food for them because they were there. They talked to me. They supported my farm stand. And I remember these specific people. So get in touch with these people. Find people that are cattle ranchers. Find people that are growing vegetables. Find people that have little market gardens. All right. Find these people in your community, and they could be great resources, and start supporting them now because you might need them. All right. You might need them. And if you didn't see my video a couple weeks ago, I was talking about how these food shortages are going to get worse, and they are pushing this cell cultivated meat as a solution. If you saw that video, hit it up down there for me to get this video out to more people. If you remember that video, if you sub to me from that video went pretty crazy, and it got out to a lot of people. That message did. And now the federal government, the USDA, has declared a food emergency in 6 different states. And just a couple weeks ago, they approved the cell cultivated meat. The FDA and the USDA did. They just approved it, and they are saying that this could be the solution to major food shortages that we are seeing. All right, so all this stuff ties together. We are entering this phase where we could see major food shortages, major food restrictions, and this could be the alternative, cell cultivated meat. All right, so please hit it up down there if you saw that video. Let's get into the details of what the federal government is declaring for this emergency. All right, so the USDA has declared an emergency in 6 different states for decreased food production. All right, and for them to declare this type of emergency, they have to be at least, and it says it has to be documented, at least 40% reduced food production capacity. They have to show it, and then they can declare this emergency. So these 6 states are at least at 40% lower production capacity than at what they should be. 40%. That's almost half of what the food that should be produced is being produced right now. All right, so this is a major emergency, and this is going on in Illinois, Iowa, Kansas, Missouri, Nebraska, and Maine. The USDA has declared a food emergency in these 6 states. All right, and they are now opening up emergency grazing for cattle. So they are now opening up millions of acres of federal land. The federal government is, and the USDA, they have declared a quote grazing emergency. That's what they are calling it. And for them to declare this, the grazing has to be at least 40% reduced. So if the farmers are getting X amount per year per acre of grazing capacity for their cattle, they are now getting 40% less of that, at least documented in these 6 states. And they have declared an emergency there to open up federal lands and allow farmers to graze on these extra millions of acres This is like the strategic oil reserve that we have. We have it in the background just in case we are tapping into our strategic grass reserves right now and our strategic hay reserves. This is what we are tapping into. Millions of acres, these 6 states, Illinois, Iowa, Kansas, Missouri, Nebraska, and Maine. The USDA has declared an emergency there because of severe droughts, and they're having 40% less hay. All right, so this is kind of like our strategic hay reserves that they are tapping into. So this is a big deal, and probably all the strategic hay reserves that they have been reduced by 40 to 50% as well. This is also affecting all the corn crops. All right, I told you that Iowa is under 100% drought right now. 100% of Iowa is under a drought. I showed that little map for you guys earlier. All right, and what is Iowa famous for? Their corn, their sweet corn. And this is the perfect pollination time right now in Iowa. It's been the past couple weeks, is when the corn is putting out its tassels and it is pollinating right now. And if you don't get good pollination between the corn, then you don't get any kernels on your corn stalks and on your ears of corn. All right, you don't get any kernels on your ears. That's what happens if you don't get good pollination. And right now, this drought is affecting the pollination there, and they are worried that they are getting very bad pollination, which is going to result in terrible corn yields in Iowa and the Midwest as well, and all these other states. They're experiencing mega droughts right now, and it's affecting the hay and the corn production. And cattle eat corn, pigs eat corn, and chickens eat corn. So you can expect the prices of all these different meats to go up. All right, even vegetables are going to go up because all of these vegetables in these states as well are getting hit by the drought too, and they're losing tons of their crop all over the place in all these different states right now. All right, so you need to be getting stocked up. It's still not too late to grow some quick crops. All right, you can still grow some lettuce, you can still grow some arugula, you can still grow some spinach, you can still get a bunch of these crops jammed in at the end of the year. You can maybe get in some potatoes. All right, certain crops. You could get in some winter crops when it starts getting cool here in the fall. All right, and if you live in Florida, if you live down in the South, Texas, Louisiana, Alabama, certain states down in the South, you can even grow all winter. All right, that's what I did. I grew in the winter seasons because it was so hot and rainy in the middle of summer. I grew my tomatoes and everything in the winter. I normally started in like October or November. All right, that's when I started my garden and went through the winter and went through the spring season. All right, so you need to be getting prepared. You need to be growing some kind of food. You need to be stocked up. There's also been major reports of cattle ranchers calling their cattle, all right, and they're calling them early. So they are losing money on a lot of this cattle because they're projecting to grow them out for a few years and make X amount of dollars, $3,000-$4,000 per cow. All right, they're projecting, depends on where you're at, depends on what business you're in, all that. I'm just throwing numbers out there, but it depends on, they're projecting to grow this cow out for 2 years, for 1 year, 2 years, and now they are just calling it at 1 year, and they're only getting, you know, half of the meat they were supposed to get out of this cow. All right, so that's going to cause less yields. All right, so we're going to have less meat, and that's also going to cause prices to go up as well, because there could be shortages and we could have supply and demand where the price of meat goes up because there's a lot less yields, and not to mention their feed is going up with corn. All right, so all this stuff's on the radar. The federal government, the USDA, has declared an emergency, federal emergency in these 6 states, grazing emergencies, tapping into the federal grazing land reserves. All right, this is literally what this is, because grass is food. Grass is food. You don't think about it, but every time I see a big pasture of grass, I just admire it, because that is energy that can be converted into food. all right? Could be converted into meat, be converted into milk, and that is food for us, all right? All from grass, all coming from grass. So this really is a strategic reserve that we have, and that's why it's important to have land too, all right? If you have land, you can graze your animals on it, and cows and everything like that, they can eat anything. They can eat sagebrush, all right? Cows can eat up to 30-40% sometimes a year when the terpenes are low, up to sagebrush, all right? You can eat sunflowers. I thought about it because I looked out the window. You can kind of see one like over here. There's a little tiny sunflower over here. I thought about it. You can eat the seeds from sunflowers. All right, look into these things that you can forage and you can eat in your area. It's so important. Once these sunflowers go to seed a little bit later in the year, they're just dropping seeds all over the place like crazy, and you can eat those. That's protein in there. There's fatty acids in there. There's a lot of good stuff. And these sunflower seeds that are just all over the place. There's millions of sunflowers all over the place where I'm at, and that's a major food source that you can eat, and you can even feed those seeds to your animals. You can feed them to your chickens, feed them to your cows, all that stuff. Major food source all around you. So just look into the natural things around you that you can eat, your animals can eat, and be converted into food, because this stuff's going to get worse. We have Niger, they just declared, or I think it was Nigeria, I believe, they just declared, which is actually like the 5th or 6th largest country on earth population wise, massive country. They just declared a food emergency as well, kind of similar to this actually. And this is in Africa, and the US is declaring a very similar emergency, and they declared this, and they're distributing seeds to the people, free seeds and free fertilizer to all the people to grow their own food, because they're having major shortages and crop failure there as well. All right, this is like the 5th or 6th biggest country in the world, and they are doing this. All right, so we are not far off from that. We're declaring an emergency in 6 different states where millions of people live, and we're tapping into strategic reserves and giving out land and giving out grass and grazing rights. All right, so big things are happening. You need to be getting prepared. You need to be getting stocked up on seeds, on fertilizer. All right, fertilizer is key. I have a bug out property, all right, that I have. It's just a little off-grid property with nothing on it, and I have a bunch of fertilizer at this property. All right, so in case I need to use it, I have fertilizer there. It's just like kind of stashed out there, out in the middle of nowhere. You never even see it, but I have a bunch of fertilizer stashed out there in case I need it. I have tools stashed out there on my bug out property in case I need it. All right, so just have these things stocked up in your possession, ready to go, because we could see big shortages coming this winter, especially places like Walmart. All right, let me know what you're seeing. If you didn't see my video from a week ago, Walmart and Home Depot just had 30,000 of their truckers go offline. All right, the company just went bankrupt. I made a whole video about it. So we could see shortages from that. All right, we could see supply chain kinks, and then we could also see raw shortages of just materials as well, and food in the supply chain as well, just not being injected in the supply chain, and see food prices go up. Food inflation is already at the highest level in 18 months. So what do you think it's going to do after the feds just declared an emergency in these 6 states and 40% reduced capacity for hay and food production? It has to be 40% for them to declare this emergency. So that's a big deal. This isn't like 5 or 10% that we can maybe mitigate or handle. This is 40%. And some places it's getting to 50 and 60% in some regions. All right, some counties in these states get into 50, 60% reduced yields that they are getting right now. All right, so get stocked up on this stuff, guys. Please hit it up for me down there. I really appreciate that. It really helps to get this video out to more people, and especially these 6 states, they're gonna get hit hard. they're going to have their prices go up. And these are the main beef producing states. All right, I've driven through these states a bunch, and they're filled with cornfields and feedlots all over, and cattle grazing too. All right, but these feedlots are all over, and these states are going to get hit hard. They are struggling to provide food, and they could have their prices increase the most. All right, so please hit it up for me down there. These people need to be getting prepared. Have canned food. If you bought canned food from a year ago and it's still good, you're not being affected by inflation as much. All right, the only bad thing is when you have to restock, make sure you don't restock at a moment when food is at its highest, like right now. Right now is probably not the best time to restock, but at the same time, if you can afford it, you should get some things. You should at least get a few cans, get a single bag of rice, even if it's a 5-pound bag of rice that just costs a couple of dollars. Get these things. They could push you over the edge, and that's how people survive in these other countries where they don't have access to food. All right, they eat rice. They eat a ton of rice. That's how they survive. Rice and beans. I've eaten red beans and rice with hot dogs probably 1,000 times. All right, I've been in situations where that's what you have to eat to survive. That's what you're eating to survive. That's what you're eating to get by. And that's how life is for a lot of the world. All right, and we don't want that to happen in the US, but these situations could happen, and they are happening right now. So please hit it up for me right now. I really appreciate that, and I'm super blessed to have you guys watching. All right, you guys really bless me, bless my life. When you bless this channel, when you hit it up down there, it really makes a difference in my life, and I really appreciate that. And I hope you have big blessings for your family, and I hope you have a big old blessed day.